All right, everybody, welcome to the Sober by Design podcast. Tonight I am recording up in Boston, away from my typical equipment. Um, I'm not running the intro that I normally run, but we will dive into why I do this podcast pretty soon. Um, this is episode 40 for me, so exciting to have gotten that many through. Most of them have had guests of various nature, people in recovery, people late in the recovery, early in the recovery. I've had a couple guests who aren't even in recovery at all, but have just had really interesting stories to share. And for me, this podcast, the Sober by Design podcast, has given me the opportunity to talk a little bit about how I live my life in recovery and give other people the platform to do the same. Right? When I got sober, um, just about 12, coming up on 12 years, um, my intention was not to just live a life revolving around recovery, 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 but I wanted to recover, find my footing, and then live my life to the fullest, right? And whatever that meant for me over those 12 years has changed. But I wanted to make sure that I was there for my family and not just, doing a deep dive into meetings or, service work or any of these things, but really living a well-rounded life. And I'd say that over the past 12 years, I've managed to do that and also focus on my own recovery and then help others out various ways. Early on, that was going to meetings. Currently, that's doing this podcast. I also do some part-time recovery coaching. The volume of that recovery coaching has changed over the past couple of years. But, I am still weaving in and out these recovery um, ideas through my life, but mostly what I focus is on how I'm living and sort of the fun I'm having because I found my sobriety. Um, you know, Up to the age of 35, 18 to 35 was rough for me. A lot of drinking. I didn't focus on myself. I didn't focus on the right relationships. I probably did some regrettable things over those years. And, from 35 on, it's been how to make that right, how to really strengthen the relationships I have, be the best person I can to everybody that I come in contact with, and then treat myself well. So tonight, I just wanted to jump on here really quick. Again, it's not easy to talk without a guest. I don't have any real planned topics tonight. I just wanted to say thank you for listening over the past, year or so of this podcast. Continue to try to get interesting guests on. I've had a couple scheduled over the past month that I've had to cancel for various reasons, some in my control and some out of my control. But rest assured, I'm working on getting, new guests, better guests. As always, if you have recommendations, please let me know. Always willing to talk to anybody. Recovery, sober, just an interesting story. I've talked to a bunch of different types of people, and really what I found out over this past year is just everybody has something to lend to, this audience. Really, my message is always, what could we be doing to better our lives? And sometimes that message comes from somebody who has 20 years of sobriety. Sometimes that comes from somebody who's got 6 months. And sometimes that message is just, you know, what we'll call a normal person, right? Somebody who can have a drink and then go back to their ordinary life and, you know, not drink again for another 6 months. So, anybody that you might have or know that you think would be good on the show, let me know. I know I've had a couple listeners and guests actually tell me, give me some recommendations. So, working on some of those. Again, scheduling's not always easy due to time constraints, my job, my kids, personal lives commitments. And that is something I wanted to touch on tonight. Just as, I'm navigating a very busy period in time, I really have been relying on time management. And this is something that I always tell my recoveries, and something that I just want to remind myself is that if I can plan my time out, I feel a little bit more in control of my days, my weeks, and my anxiety drops quite a bit when I'm in control of my time. For me, that looks maybe different than what it looks like for others. Some people are using Google calendars. Some people are just writing to-do lists. Some people use that shared calendar in the kitchen. That's just what's been going on, for the past month, what's coming up. And for me, about a year, no, say 4 months ago, 5 months ago, I dove back into a practice that I had started, which is really this robust planner. The one I'm using right now is called a WISE planner, WYSE. You can get it on Amazon. Not a sponsor, but a great product. It's a planner that kind of lets you lay out your months, your weeks, and each day, and you set priorities for each of them. So every month I set, what I foresee as my month coming up, and I can put in the major events that are coming. I can put in 3, 4, 5 goals for the month that I want to accomplish, and then I move on to the week. And for that week, I will do the same. I set these intentions for the week. So it might be, again, maybe changing a couple habits. Here's my 4 or 5 things that I want to get done for the week. And then that flows down to the day. The day is very granular. It's hour by hour. And I have about 5 tasks that I prioritize throughout the day, with one being my task, my most important task that I can't let slip. Planner allows me to take notes. There's also an area where I track daily habits. So, each month I'm tracking, say, about 8 things that I know will make me feel better throughout the day. For me, the tool has just become a way of kind of being accountable to myself. It's easy to just kind of go through the week, get some things done on a Monday, maybe slack off on Tuesday, come back on Wednesday and do a bunch. But if I'm living that way, for me, what starts to happen is there's no real focus. I kind of flow from, maybe cutting the grass on a Monday to then working on a project on Wednesday. I do some TV watching on Tuesday. It's all very haphazard. And for me, that starts to get, over time, gets more and more haphazard, which then I get less and less done. I start to feel less and less motivated through that. And I'm not focusing on myself or others the way that I could be if I just took a step back and looked at that 24-hour period that I have, and how am I spending that time. A lot of times people that I talk to early in addiction will say, I have no time to focus on recovery because I work, and then I have no time when I get home at night. So there's no way that I could get to a meeting or do anything for myself. So I challenge those people to really chart out what they do in a day. That's how I start out with this idea. Obviously, what I just described for myself is very robust and probably overwhelming for somebody in early recovery. But for somebody who's maybe still drinking, what I'll suggest is just sit down with a piece of paper, make a circle, and look at that circle as a clock, and start to actually draw out what you do in a day, right? So it might be 8 hours of sleeping, 8 hours of work, so now we're up to 16. So now you have another 8. What does that other 8 look like? Probably spend about, an hour eating, maybe 2 hours eating. Now you're down to 6. An hour of getting ready for work, maybe doing some self-care kind of stuff, hair washing, nail cutting, so it's another hour. So now you're down to like 5, right? And then in those 5, those become the 5 hours that, some of those people in early recovery are telling me I have no time. Well, that's 5 hours. So how are you spending those? What are you doing with those hours? Becomes the question. Sure, some of them might be commuting. So maybe it is only four. But the point is that, those 4 hours, if you really want to get better, are the 4 hours that you start to use on yourself. So that's the 4 hours where you hit a meeting, or you listen to a podcast, or you read a book. You go for a walk. You get together with a friend who's got your well-being in mind. That's, how you start to take control of your time early in recovery. Next little bit that I would suggest there is, writing a manageable to-do list down each day. A lot of people early on, or even people with a lot of time, or just people who are normal drinkers, will create a to-do list that's, 20 deep. And you look at a to-do list that's 20 deep, it's overwhelming. You need to do something reasonable. Set a reasonable target. So it's 3 things a day, maybe. Maybe it might be one. If it's one big thing, that might be all you can really do. So, it's an expectation setting. It's understanding your limitations and starting to craft these parameters around how you're spending your time. And time for me is the most valuable commodity. Can't make more of it. I can't earn more of it. But what I can do is start to understand how I use it and really focus in on my utilization, for for me, so how I can maximize myself, right? And maximize those hours so that I can get better. So I did want to touch on that today. Kind of relates back to just the fact that while I do a really good job of planning out my time, scheduling this podcast is a bear. There are select windows that I can do this. Ends up being about 2 nights a week. Doesn't always work for potential guests. Less and less time for me to do this, not during the evening hours, just based on, professional commitments. And then commitments around sports for my kids, wanting to spend time with my family at night, things that I also value. So this, lack of guests or lack of episodes coming out is not something that I want to continue. I'm going to work on getting guests back and really focusing on, those couple nights where I have the hours and using them right. If that means I stay up a little bit later, or maybe I have to miss, a night at the gym, that's okay. This is important to me. I hope that, anybody that's listening is getting something out of this. That's just helping them live a better life, be it, not drinking or just living their life a little bit more in a meaningful manner, right? Maybe just getting a touch better, whatever that means to you. So that is my little bit on time today. The other thing I wanted to touch on was, I don't even know how much I've talked about it on here, but back in February, my older son and my wife and my younger son actually all were kind of very much behind me going back to the gym. I had taken a while off. I got a little bit cranky. I was getting more and more out of shape, and it was just time. Part of my fitness story was back in 2018. I had started CrossFit. That was about a year after my mom had passed, and that year had kind of gone by. And through it, I was doing a lot of things to wrap up her estate and dealing with all sorts of legalities around her death, and the little bit of estate that we had to settle. It was way more work than what you would imagine for the amount of estate. But it was a long year. I came out of it and really had kind of not focused on myself at all. So I had found CrossFit in 2018, really gotten into it, got in great shape for me, and then COVID hit. We had to stop going to the gym, but it continued on at home through that early part. Even gotten some equipment for the house as became available, and slowly but surely, my level of commitment to it kind of fell off. Sometime in 2021, my brother passed away. A couple months later, my dad had a brain aneurysm. And that June of 2021, I just kind of got to a point where I couldn't manage, what was going on with my stress levels, anxiety, depression. It was a mix of things going on at that time for me. And I talked to my therapist and then my MD, and determined that it would be a good idea for me to go on an SSRI. For me at the time, it was the right choice. I knew it. I think others around me kind of knew it. It had been a lot. 2017 to that point was a lot for me, and I had just kind of hit my point. So going on that was the right choice. And then throughout the year, again, I'm not focusing on my fitness. I'm taking this medication. I think I had increased my dosage throughout, and a year later, I'm 20 pounds heavier, 25 pounds heavier, and just not feeling the same physically. Uh, I did get better mentally, which was the goal of the drug. So the drug worked. But I also kind of felt, and in talking again with my therapist and my MD, it was time to start to wean off of that, right? So I go through the protocols, I come off the SSRI, and the weight holds. So we're somewhere in 2022, 2023. Probably 2023 at that point. And, I'm 25 pounds heavier. And it just is, while I had my head back, I wasn't feeling all that great. Things weren't fitting the same. I wasn't able to move quite as easily as I had been, back in that early part of the CrossFit, as I started to get my fitness back. But I lived that way for a little bit, and then I tried to utilize some of the at-home stuff. I was going down in the garage. I was working out by myself. I was kind of doing it, but not really, right? The intensity wasn't there. The regimen wasn't there. I wasn't doing it consistently, so I wasn't getting the results. So again, early in this year, back in January, February, that sort of messaging from my family was coming in. Found a local gym up where we live. Went to an introductory class, a CrossFit class. Saw some people that I had known from the past there, and really just said, you know what, it's time to just, go in and do this. And I've been doing it now since February. We started that first week. And so I'm about 4 months in, and I can feel the difference. One, mentally, it helps. And for me right now, the physical part is the big part. The mental part, I feel like I had a good handle on this time. Although, after a hard day work, where I've had, maybe a series of rough meetings, if I go to the gym and it's a killer workout, it kind of shuts that brain off, and all I can do is think about getting through the, 15-minute AMRAP or whatever we're doing. So, it's there. It's a tool in my tool belt again, and something that I really appreciate that my family pushed me to do, and then I appreciate the gym for being there, and all the people that go there for, being supportive, and, even if somebody doesn't know it, just them being in the room is motivation. It's, you're not there alone. You have, one or two other people who are working with you, and they're pushing you along. sometimes you want to stop, but you don't because you're part of a group at that point. So for me, again, totally something that I have to fit into my schedule, something that I try to fit in 3-4 times a week. It's the best I can do now. I don't push myself to be there 5-6 days a week. I'm not looking to be a competition level athlete. I'm looking to age well. I'm looking to be able to move, hopefully, continue on this journey and see progress. So 3-4 days a week is great. What I will say is now, if I do miss a day at the gym, my ability to use my equipment at home and push myself at home has changed because, I know what the intensity level has to be. I can track it. I can feel it. Maybe it's a notch down. That's what my Whoop strap would tell me. I'm probably a 1 point down from an intensity level if I do my workout at home versus doing it at the gym. But it's there, and that's the important part for me is that I'm doing the action. I'm being true to the whole idea, and really, again, appreciate fitness being back in my life. And while I'm still 20-ish pounds heavier, and it isn't easy for me to do the things, I understand why I got here. It's all part of the story, right, of who I am and how I'm trying to get better and understand that I needed to do what I did at the time back in 2021. Taking the medication, it was the right move. And again, I think it's the right move for people who need it, despite what might happen to you physically. I think, if you need SSRIs, if you are struggling with anxiety or mental health, finding the right medication so that you can focus on uh, therapy properly sometimes is the important thing. And for me, that's what it allowed me to do. It allowed me to really refocus, work with my therapist, and understand that the medication wasn't going to be a long-term thing for me at least. And so now I am on another journey, and that's been a huge part of my sobriety story. Is like, the past 12 years I've tried different modalities. I've had different events happen that are big, life-changing type events over those 12 years. And my story keeps evolving. But the one constant is that, I focus on myself and I focus on, being a better version of who I was, the day before. And yes, there are going to be slips and I'm going to get worse maybe, even though I'm trying to get better. Things out of my control, right? People dying or, maybe some challenges at work where I got to switch jobs or, a health thing. You get shingles or, whatever it might be. The idea is that, I see this version of me from 35 on as somebody who wants to evolve and just be a better version of what I was the day before, or at least on that path. So that's a little bit about the gym and fitness, and again, another big part of my toolbox. So, time management, managing my physical health, my mental health, all very important. And I think those are, again, big cornerstones for recovery. If you're doing those things and you have a good community around you, and then you're being of service, you got a really good foundation to just be living a good life, right? You're taking care of your health. You are really thinking about how you allocate your resources, so be it your time and your money. You're of service in your community, and then you are part of a community. You have friends. You are, maybe going to a church, or you're going to AA, or you go to the gym. Right? These are all things that are going to help you along this path of finding recovery or staying in your your recovery story. I had a couple other things that I wanted to talk about tonight, but again, I don't want to go on. I feel like this has been pretty rambly, and not shooting off of somebody is a bit tricky. But as always, I want to leave you with a couple media recommendations. So I've been watching Hannibal, which is an older TV show that was on CBS. It's on Amazon Prime right now, so you can stream all 3 seasons. And it is, so one, visually, it's an amazing show. It's probably one of the more visually appealing shows. Umbrella Academy is one that kind of comes to mind with the cinematography or visuals, at least. Two, I would say it's probably the most violent mainstream television show I've seen. So if you are queasy or you don't like very graphic violence, I would stay away from it. Hannibal is based on Hannibal Lecter, who was the character in Silence of the Lambs, and even more so, the first book of that series, The Red Dragon. So the Hannibal show is more focused around sort of the origin story, if you would, of Hannibal, the early years of Hannibal Lecter, and has the FBI involved, and it is a little bit of an episode by episode type series, but is more so a 3-season arc. So if you're gonna watch it, you're gonna dive in. You're gonna really get hooked into season 1. Season 2 is going to be something that you thoroughly enjoy, and then season 3 is something that you just need to watch to finish. So, really good show, and one worth taking some time to watch. Other media stuff right now, I haven't really been doing much else. Wrapping up Manifest, we have 1 episode left of Manifest, which is on Netflix. Good show, sci-fi with a religious overtone to it. It is, I'd say it started out science fiction-ish to me, and somewhere in the middle it just became a religious show. And I thoroughly enjoy it. It's been fun to watch with my younger son and my wife. Every episode is quite good. The messaging is not over the top with the religious aspects, but you kind of understand what's going on, right? It's good versus evil a little bit. It's story about how to live your life the right way. There's a bit of story about family in there. Again, a good, solid show that had been canceled. Netflix resurrected it, and one that if you have time to sit through, I think it's 5-6 seasons long. Some of the seasons are quite lengthy, so it's one if you want to sit and have a couple weeks of something to binge. That's a show, and that's about it for me for the week. I hope this episode is something that was valuable. I wanted to get a 40th episode out. I don't know when the next guest is coming on yet, so I didn't want to let this go on anymore. It's been on my to-do list, kind of got punted a couple times, and I just wasn't going to punt it anymore. So thanks for listening tonight. As always, if you could like, subscribe, comment, suggest the show to a friend. If you have anybody that wants to be on, or if you want to be on, reach out to me on Instagram, Sober by Design Podcast, or you can follow my other page, Sober by Design. And, I've enjoyed doing the podcast for 40 episodes, and I hope to do it for many, many more. So thanks again for listening, and we will see you on the next one.